I'm going to get started, and some more people may join us as I begin. Let's see. All right. So good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us again. If you're back for our second session of our Community and Mental Wellness Coffee Chat webinar series. I'm Rebecca Baldwin. I'm the Executive Director of Saratoga Center for the Family. And I'm here again with my coffee for our coffee chat this morning. Parenting during a pandemic is our discussion topic this morning. And so for this session, I have back with me again our Clinical Director of School-Based Programming, Megan Heater-Megan. Megan is a licensed mental health counselor. She has many years of counseling experience working with children and adults who have experienced trauma, and she has some specialized training in trauma-informed therapeutic intervention models. And then also this morning, we have with us our Victim Services Coordinator, Nicole Iwaniec. And Nicole has over 20 years of experience working with children and families who are in crisis and have experienced trauma. She acts as our Victim Services Coordinator in our Child Advocacy Center, where she provides resources and support to all of our families and children who are seen in our Child Advocacy Center. And then she also works with many other victims of crime who access our clinical services and other victims of crime that are in the community needing services. So we've asked her to join us here this morning as well. And I'll welcome both of them in a moment to the screen. But for this particular topic, I think it also bears mentioning that between the three of us here this morning who will be presenting about this, we have 6 of our own children, ranging in ages from 1.5 years old to 13 years old. So all of us are currently also experiencing this parenting during this pandemic. And while we're bringing information to this conversation that's from our professional toolboxes, we are also truly in this together, trying to navigate parenting in the pandemic, along with all the other parents out there. So we'll be bringing some personal reflections as well, and things that have worked in our households. So a couple of quick housekeeping items. Again, for those of you who did not join us last time, we'll be utilizing the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. If you can't see it, you kind of have to hover your mouse over the bottom of your screen and it'll pop up. And you can ask questions there as they come up for you. We will try to answer as many of them as we can get to during our allotted time. I also have a couple of topics that we want to touch on briefly as well. The webinar today is being recorded and we will post it on our website in the blog section once it's over. So it will be there available for you to watch again, or if you want to share this with anyone who you feel it might be useful for, you can direct them to the Saratoga Center for the Family website in the blog section. We also have a bunch of resources that we've put together for this particular topic, and we'll post those there after this as well so that you can utilize them at your leisure. And of course, if you have any questions that don't get answered today, please feel free to contact us at the center. Let's see, so today, parenting during the pandemic is our topic. So I'm gonna bring on our 2 panelists here, Nicole and Megan. You may have to start your own videos. There they are. They're joining us. Hi, Megan.
Hello. Hi, welcome. Thank you.
All right. So I'm just going to kind of frame this to start with the pandemic and everything that we're currently experiencing. You know, stay-at-home orders, social distancing. Many families are experiencing a totally new dynamic. Children of all ages, they're having to adapt to changes in their daily lives, from school to play to sports, and even, family dynamics. So children of different ages may be processing all these changes differently. So I wanted to just start it off by asking if you guys could talk about how this may be affecting children and how to explain our current situation to children of different ages.
I think it's really important, as I was thinking more about how to start this conversation, I think it's really important to acknowledge that there is no one size fits all. And we know that some families have lots of support and resources and two-parent households or grandparent support. And then there's homes that are much more dysfunctional and lack resources, and homes where kids aren't safe at home. And so I think, what we talk about today may not fit all those scenarios. I think we're going to try to give it our best shot at, what to do and how to help kids. But I think, it wouldn't be fair not to acknowledge that some kids thrive when they're in school because that's their sense of community and sense of support and where they get a lot of their resources. So, so just acknowledging that this might be more challenging for families who are on the margins. So just wanted to say that. But I can start by just saying that I think it's really important with kids to acknowledge what they're feeling. I think it's really easy as an adult to want to minimize or dismiss what a child's feeling. And so it's really imperative to acknowledge the feeling involved, the thought involved, and the fact that there is a lot of fear and uncertainty. And even for us as adults, there is. And so just acknowledging that, validating the emotion, and then and hearing it out, letting them process out, whether it's about death or whether it's about sadness that they're not seeing their grandparents or their friends, or they're really, really angry about the situation. Just letting that feeling be heard. And then I think also moving into a solution focus, okay, I hear the anger, let that be a conversation, and then also finding ways to help the kid cope and find a solution to that. I know it's really hard not to see our grandparents right now, but we're going to Zoom them every day, or have them feel empowered. How often do you think you would want to talk to them? Let's try to make that happen and just help them find a solution that feels good.
I think, Megan, what also comes up for me is piggybacking off what you just said, is that there's going to be a whole range of different emotions. There's going to be some children who have very little reaction, very few questions, very, kind of okay with the situation the way it is. There's going to be kids that do feel very angry and out of control, and that may look like acting out or trying to get that control in other ways. There may be kids that do feel very sad and are kind of internalizing more the fact that people are dying and that people are sick, and have more questions about that. Can we get sick? Can we die? Can you die? Those kind of things. There are kids that have very little contact with extended family because of distance or different circumstances. There are other children who used to see grandparents or aunts or uncles or cousins on an almost daily basis. So, all those things are going to look very different depending on individual circumstances and individual kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's a great point. And I think, just being, I guess it comes to me listen to where your kid is at and what they're curious about and what they're scared of. And I think in that and really trying, I know we might touch on this a bunch today, but just really watching our own reactivity to the situation. So, instead of meeting anger with anger, making sure that we're in a calm place so that we can kind of really explore what that anger is about. Why are they acting out? Why are they getting so angry and volatile? which obviously is easier said than done. But I think as a parent, you know, taking the time to take care of our own needs so that we can be calm and present and, you know, have that co-regulation. So when we're calm, our child's much more likely to be calm with us.
Yeah,
And
I think that's a really good point there that we've, you know, we talk about a lot and really is escalated it even more so in this situation where we are, you know, stuck at home, but together, and also feeling kind of this higher level of intense emotions even in ourselves. And so really checking in with ourselves and knowing that we kind of set, you know, as the parents, as the adults, we set the tone, and, you know, modeling for our kids that we're okay, and we might not be okay, but there are times, you know, in places where you can not be okay as an adult, and in front of your children, especially if they're displaying some feelings and emotions, being able to, you know, kind of stay focused in that present moment and provide the calm and support for your child really can bring the situation down. And just as a note, we do have our very next webinar next week is going to be on adult coping skills. So tune in for that if you want more about your own personal coping skills for adults.
They use the oxygen mask metaphor, you know, that you have to be okay before you can help someone else. And I think that's true. It's all about doing the work ourselves so that we can like model it and teach and be present for our kids. And it's hard in this time because, like our seminar title, like we're all going through it together. We don't have a rule book for this. We've never done it before. So we're all learning as we go.
And I think, Megan, you know, what I'm thinking of too is that there's also great benefit sometimes in telling your kids if they're angry and they're lashing out and yelling and their voice is escalated and you find that your voice is escalated and you're kind of in that same space with them. I don't think there's any harm in saying to them, you know what, guys, I am not handling this appropriately right now. Mom needs to take a break. And then I'm going to take a few minutes and we're going to come back and we're going to discuss this at a later time. I hear what you're saying. I hear that you're telling me that you're angry, but I don't think I'm doing you any service right now with the way I'm feeling. I think kids respect that a lot more than us trying to either fake it or us kind of mirroring their worries, anxiety, anger, because then it kind of feels like, oh my gosh, she's angry too, or she's worried and I'm worried and we're all worried and oh my gosh, how do we get out of this hole? I think there's a lot more benefit in just acknowledging to them that, you know what, I'm doing a really bad job right now. So maybe I need to go work on coming back and responding to you in the way you deserve to be responded to.
Giving yourself a timeout.
Yep, absolutely.
I think piggybacking on that too, I think there is a body of research out that's about showing kids that we as adults, like our number one job is to keep them safe. And so we're going to do everything that we can to make that happen. And you can convey to your kids the ways that your family is working to keep them safe. The social distancing, wearing masks. Some kids just need to know. I mean, we as adults need to have the information sometimes about, you know, that there's a virus that's contagious and, you know, you may see in the news some scary stuff about people dying from this. And giving them information. And I think also focused on the big important thing is focusing on what your family is doing to keep them safe.
I think even little things, Megan, like assuring them that mommy is cleaning the house. That, you know, that we're, you know, that when we go out, we're going to wear masks and then mommy's going to wash them when we get home. I think it's even, especially for younger kids, it's even just those little things that kind of gives them a sense of ease that my mom or my dad or both or whatever the situation may be is kind of taking care of things for me.
Yeah.
And
There's so much we can't control, but there's like the little things that we are in control of, and showing that to our kids and reminding ourselves of that too. I think that's big.
Yeah. I don't know if we want to touch on a little bit about what our thoughts are on what we're telling our children, or how much we're telling our children.
Yes, I was actually about to bring up, asking about what you guys think about, decreasing news and negativity, and incorporating things like, good news and positive emotions, and focusing on, the silver linings, that type of thing. So if you could speak to that, because there's just this, even for adults, I find myself, the news is on in my house, I walk into the room, I immediately have a physical reaction, where I become tense, I feel more stressed, and I've heard from my own child, who's 8 and doesn't seem to be paying attention, but the news is on in the background, and a couple of hours later, I get the full news report from him. So they're listening, and those worries, keep repeating through their head like a newsreel. So, I know how it affects me as an adult. Let's talk about a little bit how that affects our kids.
Yeah, I think news and media is sensationalized intentionally to draw people in and to make a good story. So to realize that that's not the most accurate source of information for yourself or for your children, and at least we as adults can filter that, and we've learned to discern kind of what is true and what isn't true and what's sensationalized. And so I think it's really important to filter that for kids, especially in a time like now where those images could have lasting effects. They could cause like post-traumatic type symptoms. I saw a question come in from Paula about, the idea of like zombie apocalypse or things like this, like that the news media and this current thing feels apocalyptic, or like the world's ending. And that was already a thing with kids. So now it's just feeding into this fear that they might have already had. So I think you need to be the ultimate source of filtering for your kids around what information feels important and feels accurate and feels not terrifying. Because it is scary what's going on, but there's also, like I said, like lots of safety measures that we are taking to kind of mitigate this. And I know Nicole works in crisis with kids a lot, and parents who have gone through horrifying, traumatic incidents. So she has a lot of experience helping parents navigate that.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about this yesterday. I think some of the most important points to put out there is, like you said, Megan, that we are the filtering source. The news is most usually not on unless we have put it on. It's keeping in mind even little things that we as adults sometimes do and don't even realize we're doing. Like talking on the phone with a girlfriend, and talking in a way that's, oh my God, did you see how many people died? Do you see how many people in Saratoga County are sick? Those kind of things. And like Rebecca said, kids sometimes appear to not be paying any attention to us. They may even be in the other room. Even when we're talking to our spouses, or we're talking to, I'm talking to my mother, they may be totally tied up with something else, but kids are so intuitive. They hear the conversations, they pick up on our body language, they pick up on our emotional level, whether that be crying or anxious and worried and scared, and they feed off of that. So, I guess my suggestion would be to just think about those things. Think about conversations we're having. Think about where we are emotionally. Are our children seeing us cry and break down numerous times during the day? Could we, because we definitely don't want to stifle like what we're feeling, but could we step away and do that privately where our children aren't witness to it? those conversations, if they need to be, can they be someplace where our children are not? You know, if we need to watch a news reel or we need desperately to know what was said today, can we do that after they go to bed or in a private way where they aren't witness to it as well? Because I think that, you know, we definitely don't want to lie to children. Children know, they've known since the day they left school in March that something was going on. They know it's serious. They're not in school. You know, we're staying home. People are wearing masks. They know that it's a serious thing, but trying not to alarm them more than they need to be. Not trying to share those little details about how many deaths or how things keep, you know, potentially could get much, much worse. You know, I have not shared with my children that there's a thought that maybe possibly September may not bring back school the way we knew it. I don't think at this point they need all those details.
Right. Or that it's affecting children now. I think that's a big fear for parents, and like that information doesn't really affect or change what's going on. So, so do kids need to know all those scary details too? Like they just, you know, they need answers if they're having questions. I think it's important to hear them out as far as what their questions are or what their worry thoughts are, because sometimes they're very inaccurate, and you can help, you know, give them information that makes it more accurate and actually less scary. And being honest obviously is really important, but not being sensational or coming from a place of fear or anxiety. That's pretty big.
And there are, you know, some really great, you know, our kids are going to be learning through this process. And this is definitely, I mean, I hear a lot of people saying, how is this going to shape, you know, this next generation, that they experienced this at whatever age they experienced it. You know, my 1.5-year-old has no idea what's going on. But anybody who's kind of older than that, going up in age, they are going to be shaped in some way. And I think that it's really important that we as parents take hold of the way that our children are going to be shaped by this experience. And there are ways to do that in that we can reframe the situation a little bit for them, and finding the positive things and finding, you know, the silver linings. There's a lot, you know, of positive things that are coming out of this terrible situation. We're seeing people, you know, stepping up to help each other. People are being more kind to each other. You can find all sorts of things online that are happy and joyful, and people trying to bring, you know, positivity to their community and to the world during this time. And I was just thinking of, we had a event last night, Saratoga One for All, where a number of musicians locally played music on Facebook Live, and they streamed it to YouTube Live, and to support local nonprofits. And so there was messages about, you know, what the nonprofits were doing, and then also just this community coming together to listen to music. And I watched it with my kids, and I know, you know, a number of other people who were watching it with their kids, and it was just this very uplifting community coming together, a positive thing that would not have happened if we were not in this current situation. So can we talk a little bit about that? I know, Megan, you've got some resources that you've been sharing about positive ways to engage kids.
Yeah, so yeah, shifting just on that last point, if you don't know how to talk to your kids about this in language that doesn't feel scary, there are lots of resources out there. I know yesterday we looked in Sesame Street Communities, which is a resource that has done a lot of great stuff for all sorts of topics, but they do have stuff on illness and I don't know if they talk specifically about COVID, but it's like in language that kids can learn and understand. I imagine even older kids would get something out of it. So that, you know, there's tons of resources online if you aren't sure how to talk to kids about it. But yeah, I mean, I think we had lots of points about how to help kids make the most of this time, help ourselves, help our families make the most of this time. I think everybody's discovering that how important a routine is. You know, we say it all the time, but like it's kind of vital to keep people on some sort of biorhythmic routine of sleeping, waking, eat, you know, meals together, cooking together, you know, finding times to do work together, homework, work. I don't know if you guys want to share what you've been doing. You know, my kids are so little that routine is like, make sure to get outside before lunch, make sure to get outside in the afternoon. But yeah, but we have like lots of outdoor playtime. We're spending time cooking. Nicole mentioned this, and we're doing the same exact thing, Taco Tuesday and homemade pizza on Fridays. And there's just like that routine and predictability, and we can get excited about it. And I can't believe it's Friday already again.
Groundhog's Day around here.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, we have this quality time to spend with our kids, which again, caveating with what I started the conversation with, isn't the truth for all families, but if it is the truth for your family, that's definitely a big silver lining, in my opinion.
And I think that doesn't have to look the same for everybody. And I also don't think it has to be this big, grand gestures that we do. So going back to families, you know, families are in all different places financially. You know, some parents are still working outside the home, which leaves kids home during the day. One parent is working and the other one is working from home. So, you know, you're trying to get your work done while also trying to be a parent to your children. You know, so it doesn't look the same. So, you know, when I'm listening to you talk, Megan, it can be something as simple as, you know, taking a walk around your block. It doesn't, you know, it can be these, and I guess I go back to social media. You know, social media, when we're on social media, I find myself saying the same thing. When you're on Facebook as a parent, it looks like every parent is doing these elaborate cooking classes with their children and these arts and crafts activities and all these other things. And what happens is we then become and start to feel that tremendous guilt, like, why am I not doing that stuff? Keep in mind the perspective of that. You know, people do not share when they're arguing with their children online. They only share their greatest moments, pictures, everybody's happy. It does not have to be those elaborate things. You know, it can be a simple walk. It can be a simple getting out a coloring book and your child colors one page and you color the other. You know, Megan mentioned that my kids seem to just love this idea of Taco Tuesday and Pizza Friday. You know, ready-made dough where they get to spread their sauce and sprinkle their cheese on. Not a big, huge, elaborate thing, but at least for my children, they love it. And it seems to be predictable and they know it's Friday and they're excited about that. And that's all we want to do is give them moments where they feel happiness and kind of takes them out of that worry world about what's going on and puts them in your world of, you know, things are okay here. Like, we're making pizza together. I want to go back to, I was thinking, you know, as much as we say that kids absorb negative things that they hear, with very little effort, you know, they, like we've said, they can be playing a game in another room, talking to another person, but they hear the negative news that's on in the other room. They also hear the positive stuff too. So it's sometimes just as simple as you saying, wow, did you see what all those nurses are doing for all those people? Yeah. Or, wow, do you see all those policemen that are going to work? They're keeping us all safe.
Totally.
You know,
that's such a good point, Nicole.
Little comments like that they absorb that as much as they absorb the negative too. Yeah. So just pointing out, or like, wow, wasn't that great that mom's working at home now so we could take a walk? Like, we would have never been able to do that if mommy was at the office and you were at school. Or, wasn't that so cool how grandma stopped over? Yeah, she had to stay a ways away from us because she wants to keep us safe and we want to keep her safe. But that was so awesome how she could like come and sit in our yard and we could talk. I mean, just little things. Kids do not need big, huge, elaborate gestures to make a difference for them.
And that, like, to me, that speaks to the idea of gratitude. And then it speaks to the idea of mindfulness. And like, as we spend time with our kids, being there with them 100% in those moments. We can't give them 100% all of the time, but when we can give them moments of 100%ness, that's big. So look at the flowers, they're starting to bloom. Look at the colors, look at how green everything is, like noticing and feeling truly like a sense of gratitude in that moment for the things that we notice with our eyes, our ears, hearing the birds, seeing, just and building that appreciation up with our kids is like that you're sharing that moment with them. And it might be a fleeting moment. It might be back to work the next moment. It might be, you're super busy and you don't have a lot of time, but like those moments are really important. So that was a really good point.
Yeah,
I've even tried to say to my kids, like, isn't this so cool? Like we're both sitting at the kitchen table and like you're doing your work and I'm doing my work. Because they never got to see me do work. And I really have not gotten to see them do their schoolwork on the level that I'm getting to watch them now. Or when they're on these Zoom meetings with some friends, like, just commenting like, it's so cool that I get to see you with all those friends. We wouldn't have had that chance if we were kind of both in our normal routine. So that's kind of nice. And
yeah, and we have that luxury now that we never had in any time in history. Dave made that point last week that Zoom and FaceTime and these technologies that we have during this time are kind of a good resource. I know it's not all positive, but for Paula asked about siblings who don't or children who don't have siblings who are home alone seem to be struggling. Absolutely, they don't have a playmate or somebody to spend time with. And how do we, expose them to, FaceTime sessions with cousins or friends from school? Like we may have to bridge that for them, but at least we have that technology where we could do some of that. And that's another place where I don't think video games are all bad, because for some kids that's a real social outlet too, is to connect with friends and play.
Particularly, I think the teenagers, which we're not talking a great deal about, the older teenagers who might be going through this. I know, I talked to a couple of folks at work, and one of our CAC director has a nearly senior, I believe. And, you think to yourself, oh, well, he's almost an adult. I'm sure he's fine. But actually, he doesn't get to, he's big into hockey and is usually doing all of this stuff with his team. And now that's all gone. And he's usually, at school and doing a lot of things with friends. I mean, so that social interaction for those, older kids, those preteens and then the adolescents is really big.
Yeah.
And so, doing things like the video games, the ones where you get to do them with your friends, on the headset, talking, or, there are things that you can do on like Facebook, like movie watch parties and things like that, looking for that type of thing to help those that are age appropriate be able to connect in a way that feels still like a normal, teenage, older kid way, that doesn't include, not social distancing.
Yeah, I think that all the time. Like, my heart goes out to high schoolers, because that was like, I was never home in high school. I was always out with friends.
Yeah.
And I don't know what I would have done if I was stuck at home. So I feel that a lot. And I think, again, like we can validate that for our teenagers around how difficult and how annoying and all the negative things. And yeah, I mean, Jen just said, like, in the comments, you know, later bedtime's not such a bad thing if they are socializing online with friends. So as much as like routine and structure is great, we also have some flexibility right now to sleep in a little bit and stay up a little bit later and like have a little bit of, you know, treat ourselves in certain ways that feels healthy. So yeah.
I think we've also, we've talked about, I have the 13-year-old, so we've even talked about, and haven't done it yet, but ways that we could still get together with a friend and do an activity that doesn't require you to be right next to each other. My children are huge sports kids. So, you know, you can throw a lacrosse ball 30 feet, 40 feet from each other. You can throw a football back and forth. You could play tennis. You know, my son's put a net across my driveway, and, you know, those might be things that as the summer approaches in nice weather, that we may look to do. You know, maintaining all the precautions that we need to be safe, but still allowing him to be able to see his friend and have some sort of interaction. You know, the video game thing is something I never allowed online until this. And, you know, I am letting him do that a little bit with a cousin who lives in Massachusetts. You know, still in my living room where I can view what's going on, where I can hear what's going on, but letting them play a game together and chit chat back and forth has been, you know, a way for him to connect with somebody that he hasn't seen now since Christmas time, and, you know, and may not for the foreseeable future. So that has not been a bad thing. You know, at least a text, every week I say to him, like, have you reached out to at least one of your friends? You know, however, texting, phone call, Zoom, whatever, just to say, hey, what's going on? I think we need sometimes to push kids to stay connected. My son is a super social, but not an initiator. So if someone calls him or somebody Zooms him, he's fantastic, but he's not going to do that himself. So I'm trying to push him to it, you know, to make sure that he at least talks to somebody every few days, you know, because he loved that about school. He loved seeing all his friends and getting to hang out. And like I said, big sports kids. So right now they would both be playing a sport and would be staying after school and spending hours doing that. With their friends. So we need to sometimes, like Megan said, bridge that gap for them, and try to push them a little bit to do that, because we know that's what they need.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I want to shift gears just a little bit. I know that a lot of parents right now are really struggling with the fact that kids are supposed to be schooling at home now. And our roles as parents have changed in that now we're, you know, having to kind of guide them through that or encourage them to do that, and how we can best engage children in schoolwork while they're in a home environment, and what that might look like, or strategies for that.
That's a really tough one. I'm struggling with a lot of my clients with this. I think one thing is definitely taking a step back and just knowing that it's not the same as doing work at school. It's going to be harder. Letting yourself off the hook if you don't have, you know, 4 hours a day of schoolwork time done every single day. Be flexible with that time and what it looks like. I think if you have other family support, sometimes it's more helpful to have like a grandparent or somebody else try to teach your kids rather than the parent. I think kids just resist learning from parents more than from other people. I'm not exactly sure why, but that just seems to be what happens. I think that if a kid's struggling in particular, you could reach out to the teacher and see if they could set up a one-on-one meeting, because sometimes it's really about inspiring the kid and making them feel special and making them feel like they can do it and building them up. And I think they get a lot from attention from a teacher, and that could go a long way. So those are just some of my initial ideas.
I guess my thoughts would go back to routine too.
Yeah.
Is I guess a big one, whatever works for your family. Maybe it's the first couple hours of the morning, or maybe it's at the, kids get up and need an hour to watch a television show or go outside, and then they can come back to it. Maybe you're later people where you're going to play outside and kids are going to kind of play and do their thing for the daytime, and then after lunch is going to be when everybody reconvenes and spends some time on schoolwork. And then the other thing, my thought was, like Megan said, it's not going to be this. Work doesn't look the same as when we were in the office, and school does not look the same as when they were in class. We are not teachers, so letting go of the idea that we have to be perfect, that it has to look perfect, that it has to be a full 6-hour school day, the way it would, if they were in school. Keeping in mind that other things that we do have value to the academic and learning process too. Getting outside and taking a walk and talking about, like Megan, you were saying, talking about birds or talking about flowers or those kind of things have learning and academic value also. Cooking and measuring things and those kind of things.
Doing crafts.
All those things are learning opportunities and teaching times. And it doesn't have to look like, I think that we as parents put so much pressure on ourselves, that we're not doing this right, that we don't know how to do it. Definitely reaching out to the teacher. Teachers understand, at least my experience has been that the teachers understand that we as parents don't understand all the material, that some of us are working 40 hours from home and don't have 6 hours a day to devote to schoolwork, and are there to help in every way that they can. The other thing is, like reading, reading a recipe, reading a book, reading a magazine,
self-directed. Yeah. What is your kid into? What are they interested in?
All reading. So it doesn't have to be the chapter book they were reading in school. Today we read you read a whole recipe for me and we made that recipe. It's still reading. There's value. They are learning. Kids are resilient. And as much as we worry that this is going to have some huge gap in their academic abilities and their ability to move on to the next grade next year, when really all is said and done, kids are probably going to get right back to it as if this never really even occurred.
Yeah. And Wendy just made such a great suggestion. I just want to share it. I'm sure everyone can read it, but having role reversal and like having the child pretend to be the teacher and teach you what they're learning, that's a really cool idea. I could see a kid really getting into that of them explaining it to you and what you're supposed to do.
And I guess another example of us being, like I said before, with us acknowledging to our kids that we're not handling things the right way, or we're not responding to them in the right way, or that we need a break, or just yesterday we had a one-on-one meeting with the teacher where I was included because I didn't understand the lesson either. And we had gotten a couple of the math problems the night before wrong. And when we looked at them, I fully owned up to my child. I have no idea what we're supposed to be doing. I don't know what we did wrong. I don't understand the lesson. So email the teacher and let her know that we don't understand and that we're going to be on this meeting at 9 a.m. And I was. And it took literally probably 5 minutes for her to walk us through 2 problems for me to be like, oh, now I totally understand what we're supposed to be doing and what we were doing wrong. My son understood also. it gave him the impression that, you know what, mom doesn't have all the answers and doesn't know. And she reached out to the teacher because she needs help. So maybe I should do that too when I need help.
Right. Good point.
Fractions, never my strong suit.
A little off topic of the school piece, but we did have one question in our questions section here that's for teens who were dating and missing the person that they are dating. How can parents acknowledge that their child's feelings are just as valid as an adult missing a significant other? And I think that that's a really valid point, and well taken. You know, emotions
sometimes even more intensely, right? Like at that age, everything's so intensified, and if it's your first significant relationship, and you just long for that person.
Sure.
I always encourage parents to remember what it's like to be that age their kids are, and how
and the feelings associated with that, and the intensity.
And how silly we think, you know, we may think like, oh my gosh, you're 15, like really you're in love, like you can't, but thinking back to when you were that same age, that's absolutely how you felt.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and your world was going to end if you didn't get to see that person for even a weekend, let alone now 2 months.
Yeah, you can get creative too, like bring back the old school, like mailing cards to somebody, you know,
letters,
writing a letter, making a mixtape.
Oh.
That's an idea.
I don't know if that's still even possible nowadays.
Or they'd have a way to play it, but
you write down a playlist that they can download on Spotify. Sharing there you go. You share a playlist on Spotify.
Okay, we've got to come into 2020 now.
Yeah.
Musical talents.
Yeah. But yeah, sending cards. This doesn't really apply to this situation, but my sister actually had a really clever idea. She has a 10-year-old and a 9-year-old, and she does like a home store. So she gets like trinkets from the dollar store, or, you know, like the cheap stuff at the checkout at the grocery store, and the kids earn quarters, and everything in the store is 50 cents. And so like they can go shopping. I don't know how many days a week she does it, once or twice a week. And so it kind of satisfies that urge of like going to the store and getting things, and kind of that something to look forward to. So yeah, there's lots of creative ideas out there for keeping kids sort of feeling satisfied, feeling contented.
That was actually my last question. So really good transition there. You know, activities that are recommended to keep kids active and engaged while we're stuck at home. You know, it feels like this, like I said earlier, it's like Groundhog's Day around here. And so we can definitely get stuck in, you know, too much iPad time, or, you know, lots of complaining about being bored and all that type of thing.
Yeah, you can incentivize that for sure. Like if you do 2 hours a day for the next 2 days, you know, you can earn a treat. Or, you know, when I go to the grocery store, I'll get you a surprise. Or you could do an at-home store where they get to pick something out. It doesn't
even
always
buying something like online, Megan, if there was no other way, you know.
Right, like, if you get this big project done, like, you know.
even could pick, you know, so you're getting, you know, whatever.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be material items either. It could be, you know, you get to pick the family activity this weekend, or whatever, you know, we get to go for a big bike ride, or
I'll tell you what my son discovered doing s'mores. We have like this we have this stupid little fire pit thingy in our backyard. It's very, very tiny, and kind of embarrassing, actually, you know, as far as fire pits go. But we bought some marshmallows, and we let him stay up a little bit late one Saturday night. It was like an hour later than his bedtime. And at 8 years old, that was literally the best thing that he's ever experienced in his whole life. He still says that. And now we have to do it again this weekend. But, you know, using activity like those family engagement activities, to incentive, you can definitely use them to incentivize, but also just to connect and like
Yeah.
say, I mean,
Camping
I
in the
enjoyed it
backyard.
too.
Yeah.
I was like, this is great. You're right. This is kind of the best thing that I've done recently as well.
You know, two things that we did is my boys wanted to do along the same lines a couple weekends ago. We have a fire pit also. They wanted to cook hot dogs. So we did that. And the other thing is they wanted to camp out in the living room overnight.
Nice, cool.
And you know what? Those are things that we as parents, it doesn't cost us any money. You know, it's not really that big of a deal. Those are the little things that we have to kind of suck it up and say, you know what, maybe it's a pain in the butt that when I get up in the morning, they're in the living room and I'm having my cup of coffee. But you know what, in lieu of all of this that they're going through, if that's going to make them happy, and they get to stay up, you know, I told them, yeah, you guys can stay up and watch movies. I mean, chances are they were probably sleeping right about the same time, but so what? So they stay up an hour later or whatever, you know, it's Friday, Saturday night, whatever. You know,
I like to think of that as that I'm lowering the bar, like of the expectations of myself as a parent, because you know, we talked a little bit about like there's a lot of parental guilt, I mean, surrounding all of this. So, you know, if you're still having to go to work and having to leave your children at home, or if you are at home and you're trying to work and so you're getting frustrated with your children, or you know, you feel like you're lacking in trying to assist your children with their schoolwork. So there's all of this, you know, or I hear a lot from people now, a lot from parents that, you know, I'm just really bad at this, like I'm a really bad mother or I'm a really bad parent right now and I'm not doing this well. And I think it's important to really kind of acknowledge that we're all feeling like that, and we have to kind of give ourselves a break. So, and that means, you know, allowing that, you know, extra movie night or that extra hour, you know, beyond bedtime, for our kids to do something a little bit special. So I like to think of it as that I'm lowering the bar, the standard.
Or that we just, you know, or that we just feel sad for our kids that they're having to go through all of this.
Sure.
That they're not with their friends, that they're not seeing relatives, that they're not in school. I mean, I think that's just an overall feeling as a parent, is that we're just sad for them. So one little thing like sleeping in the living room, if that takes that away and makes them happy, we do have to lower
kids are really in the moment. I think that that's an important point to make about kind of coping in this environment right now. We as adults, we're very much, you know, about thinking about, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? What's going to happen to the economy? What's going to happen to my job next week? What's going to happen if my parents get sick? You know, all of these you know, kind of forward-facing fears that give us a lot of anxiety. And children are not like that. Children live very much in the here and now, and that's actually really a great way for us to kind of bring ourselves back and refocus and cope with the situation. And I find myself doing that, and it's helpful for my child as well, where, you know, if I'm feeling really kind of dysregulated and anxious and, you know, I've got too much to do and I'm worrying about this and I'm worrying about that, just kind of getting back onto, you know, that child level. We're going to just do this thing. You know, I'm going to take a moment. I'm going to color with you and bringing myself back into that moment.
Being mindfully present. If you're coloring, you're coloring. If you're singing a silly song, you're singing a silly song. If you're dancing in the kitchen, making s'mores. You're making s'mores, you know, and it's helpful for us as well, you know, as our kids. I think it's mutually beneficial. Paula has got a comment question here. Paula is our therapist at the center who works a lot with transgender youth and teens and adults. And she's mentioning that
specifically for trans teens, they may be having additional feelings because they can't access some of the things that alleviate dysphoria, such as getting a haircut, or if they were about to start hormones, because that's been delayed due to stay-at-home orders and things like that. So, you know, and I think that, I mean, I see that with a lot of even just, you know, not being able to get a haircut, like that to people it can be a really big.
Yeah, it's a form of self-care, right? And a form of identity and how you face the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it sounds so trivial, but the expression "this too shall pass" always gives me a lot of comfort, you know, that nothing ever stays the same for long. And so we may not know what's coming, but we know that it won't be this forever.
Mm-hmm.
And also just, I think, empowering them for other forms of self-expression, maybe the ways that they can control, focusing on what you can control in the moment versus what is out of your control, because there's so much that is out of our control, which is true of life in general always. But I think right now it's really, that's so obvious and evident to us that it's making it really like the center of everyone's attention. But like, what can we focus in this moment to improve the moment, to make the moment better, or to just kind of appreciate the ways that we are okay and that we are getting through. And maybe one thing that comes to mind, just because it's sort of in the same vein, is what we touched on with like getting up, taking a shower, getting dressed. Maybe it's accessorizing, putting earrings on, you know, putting on an outfit that makes you feel fancy instead of just wearing like sweatpants all day. Like wear something that makes you feel good and go out for a walk, you know, just doing little things that might make you feel more put together. I did my nails.
They look beautiful.
Just little forms of self-care that make us feel like I don't have anyone to impress right now, but you know, let's impress myself, because why not?
Sure, absolutely. So we could talk about this forever, obviously.
We could.
But it is now noon, and so I want to just check in with those of our attendees who are still with us, if they have any additional questions. And while people are thinking about if they have any additional questions, I'll mention that we are going to, again, be putting a lot of resources on the website along with this recording, so that you can physically access the resources. You know, there's so much stuff out there right now, which is also, you know, one of the benefits of kind of this happening during this time, is that we're able to access so much information on the web. You know, there's activities, ideas, there's videos of, you know, dance parties, there's live stream, music,
children's
yoga.
books.
Yep. So we have a lot of kind of put together a bunch of suggestions, but also, you know, just kind of get out there and Google too. And I often don't think about this kind of stuff in the moment, but yeah, take a look at the resource list that we put together on our website. There's also some COVID specific workbook for children that parents can engage their kids in, that is helpful. And then also a COVID-19 journal for children, which is nice to use. Let's see, we have one question here. How are you normalizing feelings of concern, stress, overwhelm, etc.?
Mm-hmm. It's a really good question. I think stress, overwhelm, we touched on it, but I think really listening to the kid, exploring the feeling. Sometimes I'll ask kids where they feel it in their body. When you feel stressed right now, where are you feeling that in your body? And kind of like taking their attention off of the thoughts and kind of getting them grounded in their body about you're here, you're okay, you're safe, you're with us, checking in around that. I've also, I know this is a little trivial, but to some of my students who are really stressed about school, just kind of letting them off the hook a little bit, you know, like standards have been lowered, performance standards. It's, you know, pass fail. There isn't a regents you need to pass, like just sort of taking down, I think Rebecca called it like lowering the bar a little bit, like lowering the expectations around what you need to be doing right now and focusing on the self-care aspect.
And we did talk about, you know, being more regulated for our kids, which I think is important. But on the other side of that, you know, with this question, I think it's also important to validate, you know, our children's feelings. And one of those ways of doing that is saying, I get it. Like, mommy and daddy, or, you know, we are feeling, and everybody's feeling this way as well. You know, this is our last webinar was on collective trauma. So this is a collective experience that we're all having across the world, all different ages, you know, all different races, all different genders. Everybody is experiencing it. And we might all be experiencing it a little bit differently depending on who we are and where we are. But we're all feeling stuff. And so I think that that's okay, you know, to have that conversation with your child, to whatever age they are, to say, you know, sometimes mommy feels scared too.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all right.
You could have them describe the feeling in a color. You could have them do like why don't you draw about that feeling that you're having? Draw me a picture that describes that feeling. Or maybe a kid might need to just do like some running around or stretches, or put on a silly song and do some dancing, like helping them find ways to get that feeling out and like identify it, separate it from themselves and work through it. And those are some suggestions.
Good point. Well, it looks like we're going to wrap it up. Doesn't look like we have any more questions. Again, if you do have questions or you need resources, please reach out to us, and check out our website. This will be up there hopefully within the next 24 hours. I can get it up on our website. And next week we are moving on to a more focused on adult coping skills session. So same time, same place, keep an eye out for registration information. And thank you again, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, Megan. Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you, guys.
Well, everybody.